wall. Yeah, I feel like we're building a dam.
Oh.
A hydro. It's like the Hoover Dam. It's a hydro, like it's going to be
There'll actually be day laborers entombed in it.
Yes, it will be like the Great Wall of China.
Yes.
It will take so long, and it will be so deep and so high that...
I've said it once, I'll say it again, and I'll be very quick about it. All of you who claim to be simpatico with the government and who are cool with the administration and cool with the man, come out to Southern California, buy yourself a house in the hills, and try to build something.
Yeah.
And then you will quickly go from Janine Garofalo to Ruby Ridge. Just in a matter, I mean, there's a part that wants you to get on the roof of your house with a shotgun and shoot at anybody in a government vehicle. Like, what you have to do, the unnecessary acts, and by the way, it translates into hundreds of thousands of dollars that you throw literally into a hole in a ground because some a-hole engineer wanted to satisfy the city. He has no stake in it, and it is completely and utterly
and it's their
insane.
Time for power.
Yes, and all you do is cut the checks. My brother-in-law has a house. My sister and brother-in-law have a place up in Topanga Canyon. He wants to build a house on some land. He wanted to build a retaining wall, and he went to the geologist and he went to the engineer, and the guy said, here's all you do. You drill caissons 64 feet deep. You do them 4 foot wide.
When you hit oil or bedrock, stop.
You do them 8 foot on center, and you do them for 200 feet. That is the Hoover goddamn dam. That is $300,000 and 40 cement trucks or 80 cement trucks. It's impossible to do, but what does the city care and what does the engineer care?
How is anything still standing according to their standards now?
Please, all right. Now, Joel McHale, I must stand up and yell at every goddamn engineer and every goddamn city bureaucrat in this city.
Look what you've done.
Number 2. Standing, everyone.
Let me say this. Joel, you like this tea?
I was so excited for the Oprah clip.
You think about posters with cats on it.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, if you want to do any building in this goddamn city, especially if it's up in the hills, you must either build the Hoover Dam or Hitler's bunker.
Right.
Why? Because we're an earthquake country. Because it's dangerous, and we hide behind safety. We hide behind the veil of safety. Hey, just playing it safe. Hey, better safe than sorry. Hey, we're an earthquake country. My house was built in 1929. It has no reinforced concrete, no plywood, because plywood wasn't invented, no Simpson straps, no HDs, no hold downs, no all thread, no J bolts, no nothing. 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 They had some poor Irish guy, poor foundation, and they set a house on it.
He's sweating
That
blood.
was it. There was no straps and no Tico clips and no 835s and no continuous shear wall and no moments and no nothing. No nailing schedule, no inspector, no nothing. Now, nothing.
Nothing.
Now, that house was built in 1929, and you know where it is today? Right the F where it was put. By all the dead people with no hold downs and no rebar and no bunkers and no straps and no nothing. Why? It's an earthquake country. It's an earthquake country. Now, what do you think the house did, you retards? Did it sprout legs and run to Montana every time there was an earthquake and then hustle back and land on its foundation? No! It sat there with no straps, no plywood, no nailing schedule, no hold downs, no all thread, no piers, no pylons, no grade beams, no retaining walls, nothing!
I don't know what we're yelling about!
80 goddamn years through every goddamn earthquake this city could put up, and it has moved not an inch. But yet, when I add a garage onto the back of the house, it has to withstand an oil tanker running aground and plowing into the side of it. Why? Because the structure that I build new can't be twice as strong as the existing house, can't be 10 times as strong, can't be 1,000 times as strong. It must be 1 million times as strong as the structure that it's next to. Well, first off, what do you think, where do you think me and the kids are going to be when the next big one hits? In the garage? Hey, kids, we moved your cribs out to the garage so we can withstand a nuclear attack. Listen, you idiots, make the goddamn thing stronger than the existing structure, not 1,000,000 times stronger. This is essentially a lanyard, and you want a piece of anchor chain in the middle of our lanyard. Make the next link stronger than the chain, but not 1,000,000 times stronger, because it cost $1 million to make it 1,000,000 times stronger, you pussy bureaucrats. Thank you. All right, let's get back to Super Joe McHale. You got clips?
Yeah, I got a couple. My one little thing there.
Yeah, good luck with your retaining wall. Good luck with your $200,000 retaining wall.
Number
Good
4.
luck with your engineer who's a slave to the city, and the city bureaucrats are going to charge you thousands of dollars and tell you what you can and can't do.
I keep hearing the word survey about every 10 minutes, and I go, well, how much is that going to cost? They're like, we're not sure.
Oh, good luck with it.
It sounds expensive.
Hire a geologist, hire a surveyor, hire an expediter to get it through the city, and good goddamn luck with your retaining wall.
Now, here's what I find so strange. You could build, as you were saying, you were going to build a bunker. You will build, right? But if you have trees surrounding your house anywhere in California, those trees could set your house on fire in a heartbeat. So why do they not make us cut down every tree near any house?
Well, they're not practical. They're interested in your money, not your safety.
Right.
Number one. Number two, they all hide, like I said, behind this safety thing. And nobody cares except for the guy who's cutting the checks. Man. That's you.
I just want to say that Adam is sweating.
And thus,
he pooped. And he whizzed all over his computer during that speech.
Thus, Joel McHale.
His eyes rolled back in his head.
He vomited. I don't think you could. He actually spoke through his vomit during that.
Joel McHale's going to be at the Grand Sierra Resort Casino in Reno, Nevada, so he can build a retaining wall. That's right. You will, if you go out and attend the show, you will pay for about 2 feet of one grade beam.
That's right.
Thank you.
You make a good point, which is that life before inspectors wasn't a disaster. My house was built in 1914. It's still sitting in Koreatown. It's fine.
That trap. We're an earthquake country. What country were we in before,
You were
Brazil?
Strasser.
Oh, no.
Look at the Romans.
Yes.
Look at the Greeks.
That's right.
Look at the Chinese, what they built thousands upon thousands of years ago, and it's still standing.
There's a good likelihood, Joel, that you're going to hear the same rant again tonight at dinner, so I hope you liked it.
We're an earthquake country.
My wife can't wait for that.
Earthquake country.
I hope your wife
Adam, you know my wife's name?
Earthquake country. Yes, I do.
What is it?
Earthquake country.
What is it? You know this.
Don't tell me. Her name is Sarah.
Yeah!
Oh, my God!
Yeah!
Thank you.
It's been about a week since James Damore released his internal memo at Google describing what he referred to as an ideological echo chamber within the company. And a lot has happened since then. The first, and perhaps most noticeable, being that James himself was let go. He was fired for publishing what outlets such as Gizmodo referred to as a 10-page screed. The memo itself sought to address the issue of diversity and hiring practices at Google, as well as the reasons for the disproportionate number of men and women within the tech field in general. Speculation as to why this was, and to the effect it was having on the company, with James attempting to state that they lacked a diversity of opinion, and that it was this that was having a far greater impact than, say, something like simply diversity within gender. Within the span of 24 hours of its release, the internet was bombarded by reactions from Google and Google employees as word spread about what James had written. People were literally shaking. They just couldn't. I can't even. I'm literally shaking right now. And it wasn't long until Google CEO Sundar Pichai released a statement addressing the matter, in which he said that while some of the issues James had raised were fair for discussion, part of it, quote, advanced harmful gender stereotypes. And so, he was out of job. In the subsequent days that followed, James would go on to explain that the issues he brought up within the memo were ones which he personally had raised previously, and that at no time in the past had any employee he had broached the subject with had an issue with it. Yet after going public, that all seemingly changed. And we soon began to see glimpses of this ideological echo chamber that Damore had been talking about, most notably with former Google employees attempting to create a blacklist to help ensure that James would never be able to find work within the industry again. People such as Kelly Ellis, who openly discussed on Twitter her attempts, as well as the attempts of others, to stymie both James and his supporters' future job prospects. But it didn't end there. Now, seemingly not content to merely fire James, Google appeared to want to give a nod of sorts to these efforts to blacklist him. While most would find the idea of a company tacitly supporting ex-employees creating a blacklist for people within their own industry to be foolish, Google, it appears, did not. But that shouldn't really come as a surprise to you, though, because it would appear that this mentality is something which has existed within the company for years now. Take, for example, this post made by Adam Fletcher from all the way back in 2015. While Google appears to be doing very little to quell the hostile voices that exist inside the company, I want those hostile voices to know I will never, ever hire you or transfer you onto my team. Ever. I don't care if you are a perfect fit or technically excellent or whatever. I will actively not work with you, even to the point where your team or product is impacted by this decision. I'll communicate why to your manager if it comes up. You're being blacklisted by people at companies outside of Google. You might not have been aware of this, but people know. People talk. There will always be social consequences. And he's not alone. Others at the company have shared this same opinion throughout the years. Blacklists do exist. They should exist. Tech companies talk with one another, and you will suffer consequences for disagreeing with groupthink. It would appear then that just from this small cross-sampling of current and former employees, that perhaps James's memo wasn't as far off the mark as some news outlets would have you believe. That there really may exist an ideological echo chamber at the company, and that diversity of opinion really isn't tolerated all that well. But what exactly is the underlying foundation for that echo chamber? How did it establish itself, and is it merely confined to Google? Or is it an industry-wide phenomena? Well, I'd wager that those working in the tech industry on the back end experience something very similar to what a user would on the front end. Namely, the 3 Ds. Demotivate, demonetize, deplatform. Demotivation is something we've seen play itself out on numerous social media platforms now for a number of years. Be it shadow banning on Reddit or the soon-to-be-introduced limited state on YouTube. The concept is roughly the same. Isolate a user from the general population, limit their ability to interact with others, and watch as they gradually lose their motivation to continue. Demonetization is the more recent of the three. Its goal is to cut off any and all financial backing an individual may have, to essentially starve them into the gutter, and hope that this lack of revenue diverts their attention into other efforts to sustain themselves. The adpocalypse, as some YouTubers have dubbed it, would be one such example. Others would include removing individuals from payment processing services altogether. Finally, there's deplatforming. This is the most direct and devastating of the bunch. Unlike the other two, deplatforming seeks to utterly remove an individual from as many services as possible. And much like Fletcher himself brought up when he stated that companies talk, users have seen instances of where their removal from one platform seems to create a cascade of bannings, removing them from multiple others. In Dunmore's case, the demotivation would be shunning from those within his own industry. The demonetization would be his firing. And the deplatforming would be getting blacklisted. So what exactly is causing this? And how does it tie back into what James wrote about in his memo? Well, to better understand that, you really need to take a look at some of the events that have played themselves out over the last 5 years within the tech industry itself. By examining these events, you're able to see the issue as a whole, and some possibilities as to where this all originated. Certain individuals, concepts, and organizations seem to repeatedly reappear, each touching on or in some way related to events that help to shape this current atmosphere of shutting down differing opinions. Even looking back to Google, once again, you can start to see what helped to shape, at least partially, the outlook the company currently has. Individuals such as Randy Lee Harper, who reportedly, while decrying things such as cyber harassment, were they themselves involved in what appeared to be that very same activity. Or people like Rose Eveleth, who helped to make a man who landed a probe on a comet cry because of his fashion sense.
The shirt I wore this week, I made a big mistake and I've offended many people, and I'm very sorry about this.
These were just a few of the people that Google Ideas thought were a good choice to bring on board and advise how they could combat the larger issues facing their platforms. But as I stated earlier, this is a phenomena which extends well beyond something happening simply at Google. It is in fact industry-wide. Take for example the following story, and how its players meander their way from one touchstone moment of policymaking to the next. Mozilla CEO states Reddit users' anonymous comments crossed the line in relation to a post about the exit of community organizer Christine Kohler from the company. The user's comments, which are still viewable on R Linux, say the following. Frankly, everyone was glad to see the back of Christine Kohler. she was batshit insane and permanently offended at everything. When she and the rest of her blue-haired, nose-ringed asshole feminists are gone, the tech industry will breathe a sigh of relief. Now, if you click back a bit from this comment, you're brought here, which is discussing GitHub and their attempts at creating an open-source code of conduct. Harassment includes physical contact and simulated physical contact, e.g. textual descriptions like hug or back rub, without consent or after a request to stop. Because cyber hugs are clearly rape, and emoticons, well, those are just outright molestation. So where exactly does this particular code of conduct originate from? Well, searching the quoted portion the user highlighted in their comment leads you to geek feminism. And sure enough, a simple scroll through the page leads directly to the quoted line itself, as well as other policies related to how to behave around other people. Because, you know, if you don't tell people not to shit in the punch bowl at a party, they totally will. But it's the attribution at the bottom of the page that helps to show whose hands guided the creation of this most closely. And among them is Valerie Aurora, one of the principal founders of the ADA Initiative. The ADA Initiative is, or I probably should say was, an organization whose stated goal was to help women in tech through a myriad of means. Outside of developing a code of conduct for conferences and companies, they sought to use feminism to fix the tech industry. The ADA Initiative is a feminist organization. We strive to serve the interests and needs of women in open technology and culture who are at the intersection of multiple forms of oppression, including disabled women, women of color, LGBTQ women, and women from around the world. We are making a difference in open technology and culture by supporting and connecting women in these communities, changing the culture to better fit women instead of changing women to fit the culture, helping women overcome internalized sexism that is the result of living within the existing culture, asking men and influential community members to take responsibility for cultural change, giving people the tools they need to change their community, e.g. policies and ally skills, creating sustainable systems to support feminist activities in these communities, being the change we want to see by making our own events and communities safer and more inclusive. They even went so far as to hold seminar, as their YouTube account really only has one listing currently available: Overcoming Imposter Syndrome. Overcoming Imposter Syndrome. The feminist tech website created a seminar on how to help women in tech not feel like total frauds at their job. And when you take some time to look at Valerie Aurora and what she lists or describes herself as, you find out that she is a feminist activist. That is the occupation she is most known for. And her opinions would seemingly follow suit with that. Another 2013 controversy that received commentary from Aurora was Donglegate, in which PyCon attendee Adria Richards faced backlash for reporting a conversation overheard between two men sitting near her. Aurora condemned the threat sent to Richards and stated that Anonymous, by using large numbers of computers, was distorting social pressure. When asking if firing one of the males was an appropriate response, she said, "I don't have enough information to know that." 2 years later, Aurora praised the gender ratio at PyCon and called Guido van Rossum and the PyCon community the biggest success story for women in open source. In the same interview, she approved of the culture of the website Tumblr. Because, of course. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with who Adria Richards is and what Donglegate is referring to, two individuals who were at a convention Adria herself was attending happened to make a joke related to a piece of equipment referred to as a dongle. The joke was semi-crude, but nothing that you would not normally be accustomed to hearing when talking about a dongle. However, Adria found this to be horrifically sexist and went about a campaign of taking pictures of these two individuals and trying to get them fired. Now, she would succeed in getting one of the men fired, and then she herself would be fired as people looked into who she was and statements she herself had made on social media in the past, all culminating in a ironic end to that particular shitstorm. And that was simply one example of how the start of one story ends up involving 18 others, simply by merit of the fact of the people involved. But through it, you're able to see one of the issues that starts to become a reoccurring one, namely the hardline promotion and injection of feminism into tech. Another clear example of this would be the GNOME Outreach bankruptcy debacle. Simply put, GNOME was part of a push to bring more women into tech. Their solution? The outreach program for women. But alas, they ran into just one tiny little issue. Just one tiny itty-bitty little overlooked fact. The amount of money invested into the outreach program itself nearly completely outstripped their yearly financials, rendering them completely up shit creek. Funnily enough, if you look around for interviews related to the program around the time this happened, you'll find one. Hosted on the Ada Initiative. I think my favorite excerpt from it is this. One of the things that I love about the program is that many of the women who come through it wind up being our best advocates. Some of our former participants have gone on to speak about the program at conferences and in their communities. Some other participants become mentors in future rounds. One participant now serves on GNOME's board of directors and is our treasurer. So the outreach program for women hires a woman from the program to manage finances, and this nearly results in the complete financial collapse of the organization entirely.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme. Every stanza kind of rhymes with the last one.
But as the saying goes, never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity. Then again, old Hanlon didn't work in the tech industry, now did he? On the other hand, Eric S. Raymond did. In fact, he was well known in it. So just imagine the reaction he garnered when he publicly stated that feminists were creating honey traps in an effort to frame tech leaders. In a blog post this week, Raymond dropped this bomb on the internet. The short version is this. If you are any kind of open source leader or senior figure who is male, do not be alone with any female ever at a technical conference. Try to avoid even being alone ever, because there is a chance that a women in tech advocacy group is going to try to collect your scalp. Raymond's evidence for this assertion came from an unnamed source I trust with whom he shared an IRC chat. The source accuses some members of the Ada Initiative, an organization that supported women in open technology and culture through activities such as producing codes of conduct and anti-harassment policies, of trying to pre-generate outrage and collect scalps. The MO was to get them alone with a target, and then immediately after cry attempted sexual assault. Raymond's source alleges, going on to say that Linux kernel supremo, Linus Torvald, is never alone at any open source events because he is aware of the potential for such incidents. Well, there's that group again, the Ada Initiative. Interesting, isn't it, how it seems to continually pop up time and time again. Of course, both the real-world examples being given and the parallel to the points they help to illuminate within Damore's memo don't end merely with a push for diversity of hire or feminism in tech. They also apply to political ideology as well. Disagree with gay marriage? Then, like Brendan Eich, you can't be the CEO of Mozilla. Want to support Donald Trump for president? Then, like Palmer Luckey, you need to leave Facebook. There appears to be a strong, if unspoken, rule about what politics are allowable and which are unallowable when it comes to Silicon Valley and tech in general. And this then brings it all the way back to the memo itself and to the questions which it helped to raise in the first place, about whether or not an ideological echo chamber did exist, and if so, what was a part of its underlying foundation. When looking at these events, along with a host of others, it starts to become fairly clear that Damore wasn't so off his mark. There has been a push in tech to secure a diversity in the workplace, especially among the sexes, while at the same time seemingly foregoing the notion that diversity in opinion has any merit at all. Multiple instances of organizations and individuals reoccurring quite commonly seem to, time and time again, arise to create firestorms, which leave all those affected the worse for wear, while they publicly go about announcing it as some sort of victory. Is it any wonder then that opinion and tech seems to toe the party line, when it's clear from observation, when it doesn't, what the outcome will be? This issue is bigger than simply one company. While Google may have been the touchstone for this particular arc, the story itself is tech. When your industry is rife with blacklisting, back-channel attempts at sabotage, potential plots to entrap, and the inability to openly express your own opinion for fear of retribution, then all the claims that the industry has made about inclusivity and openness and safe spaces is merely a false facade, smoke and mirrors meant to fool the masses into believing that when they say equality for all, they meant it, when in reality, equality for some is a far more accurate description. All the buzzwords which are so readily bandied about these days, such as toxicity and problematic, are really just guises worn by shitty people to do awful things to coworkers whose opinions they believe to be wrong-think. And so, in closing, I ask you, after having heard all of this, was James Damore wrong?
Really makes you think.
So, this is the pushback. Now, here's what's happening. Over the last 8 years or so in this country, we've been hearing about all what's going on campuses. We've been introduced to the scourge of third-hand smoke. We've been seeing guys, all the Black Lives Matter movement and all this stuff. Duke lacrosse, that was 10 years, but all this trumped up insanity.
Strangely.
Yeah, 1 in 4 women have a chance to be raped on campus, and or whatever, black professor has to talk to white cop because he doesn't think he lives there, and the guy's got to show up, gets invited to the White House to sit on the lawn and have a beer, the Trayvon Martin thing. All the stuff, a lot of it racial, a lot of it has to do with women, a lot of it, insanity. There's no time. Look, saying that Trayvon Martin would have looked like your son if you had a son is an insane statement for a president, for any president to make, and all it does is incite. It's very agitating to the people, and then the grand jury finds out that the story is what the story is. And the same with Ferguson. And everybody, there's a black version of it, there's a female version of it, there's an everything version of it. And basically, heterosexual white males who go out and go to work every day are going, hey, you know what? Fuck this. I'm done. I don't like this. I don't like what we're becoming. I don't like to have to apologize for paying taxes. I don't like to have to apologize for telling anyone of any color or any persuasion, hey, get to work, feed your family. By the way, stay with your family. You can't leave your family. Everyone's tired. All the earners, they're tired of apologizing. And they don't like where this thing's going. And they don't like the fact that, we have to cancel the father-daughter dance because we'll just call it the daughter-guardian dance, a legal guardian dance. No, I want to go to the father-daughter dance. I went, by the way, because I moved to a community that has that. And my daughter loved it, and so did I. Not as much as my daughter. The point is I want to live in a world where where the guy who greets you at Walmart is allowed to say Merry Christmas and is not mandated to say Happy Holiday or Happy Holiday Season or seasonal holiday song. We're done. The people that fought the wars, that go to work, that pay the taxes, and by the way, this is not the white supremacists. These are all people of all backgrounds and all religions who go, it's Christmas. It's good. Dennis Prager's the biggest Jew on the planet. He's like, say Merry Christmas. He always says this, we're throwing a holiday party. He always goes, what holiday are we celebrating? Oh, it's Christmas. Oh, okay. Well, then can we just call it what it is? For the what do we do on Arbor Day? Just call it Outdoor Day or Shrub Day or something. 4th of July. I mean, just call it what it is. All these people are tired. They've had enough. And basically, what they're doing is they're going Donald Trump because that's Trump's appeal. Now, his appeal is the same thing I was talking about with Kurt Cobain. What's Kurt Cobain do? He can't walk out in a T-shirt and jeans. He has to literally mess himself up.
To the extreme quality.
He has to look disheveled.
Yeah.
He has to look homeless. And what Trump is doing is he's becoming a comic book character of that voice. Throw the bums out that are protesting. You don't like what I got to say? Rough them up in the back. Hey, we're building a wall. We're going to get them to pay for it. He's doing a elevated comic book version, a almost adolescent fantasy version. Is that
the only thing that those people would respond to that are so fed up? Or is it just what gets them really going?
Well, look at movies. They're superheroes. They're not heroes. They're superheroes, you know? They don't, well, Superman can jog really fast. And no, he can fly, and he can penetrate steel, and he can, you know what I mean? Like, we're not looking for middle of the road. You know what I'm saying? When we go, we want to go whole hog. We need it in our face. We need big and loud. I don't even know if Donald Trump would work if he was 5'7". He's got to be 6'3" and 240 pounds. You know what I mean? He's got to be all hair and jowl. and so what all the folks that work hard, pay their taxes, and are tired of hearing about microaggressions and people finding safe spaces on campus and the Duke lacrosse and all the other trumped up whatever bullshit we've decided. We've turned on ourselves. How quiet. We've turned on ourselves as a society. We're tired of us beating us up, explaining about how we cornered the market on racism, how we invented slavery, all this stuff that all other cultures did, and we actually did a better job at stopping this, at ending this scourge. We were the ones we fought the war over slavery. We died over slavery. We're tired of trumping everything up, pardon the pun, bring it all back and feeding ourselves a steady diet of poison about how horrible this country is, how we turn our back on our poor and the refugees and blah, blah, blah. And Trump has become a cartoon superhero character.
So we shouldn't be scared of this.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not scared of anything.
That's my question.
And the support for him is the build-up of all the beers on the White Houses, and he could have been my son and all that. And we're all just knee-jerking it to Trump.
Talked about silent. Looks very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to this audio, which is my response to Vox Day's podcast or Periscope or whatever it was on Mother's Day. Now, in the description box, I will put the link to Vox's presentation. It's about 27 minutes long, and you can go see that directly. Now, the reason I'm not cutting and pasting it directly into the audio or a video is the sound level is very low, and you won't be able to hear what it is that he has to say. And one of the reasons it's taken a while for me to get back to this is that I wanted to transcribe what he said so that I could quote him accurately. Because I like Vox, I think he's a good guy, I think he's a smart guy, and in a response to him, he deserves my respect of quoting him as accurately as I can. Any transcription errors are my errors, and I apologize. And the video link is there, so you can go see him say exactly what he has to say, as long as you've got a audio, the ability to turn the audio up loud enough. Okay. So with that, I shall get started. So what does Vox have to say? He says, and I'm not obviously with 27 minutes of audio, I'm not going to transcribe it all. I guess that's obvious, right? But I'm not trying to take anything out of context. I'm not trying to be selective in what I am covering. And if you want to hear everything that he says, please go to the link, play it, and listen to everything he says. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to first read in all the pieces that I've transcribed and picked out that I want to comment on, and then I will go through each part. So this may take a little while, but I think it's worthwhile. And if somebody wants to go give this to Vox, great, that'd be great. So this is full quotations. Quote, 80% of divorces are caused by women falling for the lie, but the point is blaming them accomplishes nothing. You are not going to salvage them, you are not going to rescue them, you're not going to prevent other women you are not going to prevent other women to making the same mistakes by being angry and bitter and just pounding the table. Somebody in the comments just asked me what I think of Megtoad. I think they are cowards. I think they are useless. Gee, thanks, Fox. They have nothing to offer society. They will go their own way, they will die, they will be forgotten, and they will have contributed nothing on average. Now granted, you have the exceptions. You have Isaac Newton. It is apparently believed that Isaac Newton died a virgin. He made massive contribution to humanity. Tesla made massive contributions to humanity. On the other hand, what a tragic loss to humanity and what a tragic loss to the gene pool those men represented. The point is, the average MGTOW is not a Tesla, he is not a Newton. Typically, he is just a very bitter gamma, maybe a delta, who's been hurt by women and is going off to sulk. Gee, nice characterization, Fox. But so what? We are in a cultural war. We are in a civilizational war, and there are always casualties in war, okay? I am not mitigating the pain that these men go through. I am not denigrating the pain that these men go through. I am saying that their anger or their hurt or their bitterness, I'm not saying that their anger or their hurt or their bitterness is not well merited. But yes, men should sacrifice for civilization. That is what civilization requires. That is what civilization has always required, and that is what civilized men do. You are here because some of your ancestors were willing to sacrifice for civilization. One of my ancestors died at Valley Forge. If he was willing to do that, you are not willing to risk the possibility of losing 50% of your stuff for a few years? The funny thing is that half these guys who talk about this stuff say we have to fight and we have to do this and blah blah blah. You won't even risk the possibility of losing your stuff. You are not going to risk your life. You are not going to risk getting scratched. You know it, we know it, stop pretending. Mothers are a necessity, he says. Now there's another long passage of more woman worshipping, because it was a Mother's Day speech and he's trying to ingratiate himself to his wife. Then he goes on to say, quote, "There is literally nothing more important than a woman who makes a decision to become a wife and to become a mother and to raise the next generation of the West, because if too many women do not make that decision, the West will not survive. And you can't say that about anything that we men are doing. Yes, maybe the logic is ruthless, but it is correct." Okay, so they are the things that Vox Day said that I'm going to comment on. He did say other things that I'm not going to comment on, right? So, 80% of divorces are caused by women falling for the lie, but the point is, blaming them accomplishes nothing. Men are not blaming women. Men are saying women should be held accountable for their signatures on contracts. Women should be held accountable for their word. And if women are not held accountable for their signature on a contract, or women are not held accountable for their word, then they should not be allowed to sign contracts, and their word should be valued as meaningless. Okay? I haven't heard, I don't hear MGTOWs, quote, blaming women, right? I hear MGTOWs saying, these women have done these things, and I'm taking good notice of that, and I don't want to play in that sandpit because women are not held accountable, they're not held responsible, right? That's what I hear. Now, yes, some men might get angry and upset and blah, blah, blah. Fine, that's great. I fully support that. But to say that men are blaming women is patently untrue, because the vast majority of us men are saying women should be held accountable for their actions. We're not blaming them for their actions. We're saying they should be responsible for their actions. So, Vox, shove the shaming language of men are just blaming women up your ass, Vox. That's not good enough. It's not going to fly with me. He then says, you are not going to salvage them. You're not going to rescue them. You are not going to prevent other women by making the same mistakes by being angry and bitter and just pounding the table. Oh, so apparently it's men's problem to salvage women or to rescue women or to prevent women from making mistakes. Apparently that's somehow men's problem. That's got nothing to do with women, right? And if you're angry and bitter and pounding the table, you're not going to do all those things, which I would argue is not the responsibility of men in any case, right? The responsibility for making sure that women are brought up to be decent people, I would argue, rests significantly with the mother, right? Significantly with the mother. The mother and the grandmother are the people who should show young women, young girls and young women how to behave. Certainly in my family, my grandmothers did that and my aunts did that, right? They showed young women how to behave, not the men. You know, why would a man show a female how to behave, right? Now, men can teach women some things. For example, men can teach young girls that honesty is the best policy. But apparently women don't teach girls that. Women wink at their little daughters and say, yes, daddy thinks honesty is the best policy, but you're a girl and you don't have to live up to your word. Changing your mind is a woman's prerogative. Women undermine men at every step of the way. In raising children today, women undermine men every step of the way. My wife said it in her letter to me, when she begged me to take her back to Vox. She said, I understand I have undermined your every effort, right? She said that. Now apparently it's my fault that she undermined my efforts, right? Apparently it's my fault she white-anted me, right? That's apparently my fault, not her responsibility. And it's apparently me blaming her for her actions when I point out that's what she did. Oh, that's just blaming her for her actions. She's a child. She can't be held responsible for her actions. She's a grown damn woman, and either she is responsible for actions or she should be lawfully categorised as a child and chattel property to some man. That's the real choice, right? So no, we're not here to salvage women. We're not here to rescue them. We're not here to do any of that shit, right? And if you think we should salvage women and rescue women, maybe we should just throw them in the tar pit of time and go get some decent women from somewhere else. There's plenty available, you know. Then he says, quote, somebody in the comments just asked me what do I think of MGTOW. I think they are cowards. I think they are useless. End quote. Really, Vox? You think I'm a coward? You think I am useless? Really, the only man in the world to walk into a divorce court with a video recorder and record the crimes therein. The only man in the world to publish all his divorce court documents to prove the crimes being committed therein. I'm a coward. I'm useless. I video recorded crimes in a divorce court in front of 2 federal officers, risking my life to do so. And then to follow up all that, I was criminally victimised for years and years and years by 4 national governments. But I'm useless and I'm a coward. Really, screw you, Vox. You haven't done what I've done, right? Before you criticise the man, Vox, you better have done what it is you better have done what it is the man has done that you're about to criticise, right? Screw you. I am neither a coward and I'm not useless. I've already raised 4 children, Vox. Right? I've already raised 4 children, more children than you. I have already achieved more in the world than you're going to achieve in your lifetime. Already done it. And I'm only 53. Right? So screw you calling me a coward. Screw you calling me useless. Right? They have nothing to offer society. Yeah, really. I have done a great deal of good in my, quote, society over the years. One of the things I did was sell a deal to set up a data warehouse to help prevent drugs coming into Australia. And as a result of my work, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of young Australians were not able to get to buy drugs, and hundreds of lives were saved. But I've got nothing to offer society. Screw you, Vox. Literally, just screw you. I also helped Australia's largest company, Telstra, become more effective and more efficient and more competitive on the national, on the international scene. But I've got nothing to offer society. Screw you. I also worked in IBM's International Software Development Centre for years, which was bringing international money into Australia in terms of Global Inc. IBM Corp was paying money for my salary to develop software which was installed in 21 other countries. But I've got nothing to offer society. Screw you, Vox. Oh, I went and lived in Ireland, and I travelled all over the world implementing data warehouses, and I brought the money back, and I paid my taxes, and I put 2 children through school, and I provided for my wife as a sole income earner for 14 years, or for 16 years of an 18-year marriage. I paid for the raising of 4 children and put them through college and university, well, except for the younger 2 who had that stolen from them. I did all that, but I have nothing to offer society. Again, screw you, Vox. I've done more for my society than you've done. I've probably paid more taxes than you've done. In Australia, I was paying up to 96,000 Australian dollars in taxes a year into my society. Oh, but I've got nothing to offer society. Screw you, Vox. Right? They will go their own way, they will die, they will be forgotten, and they will have contributed nothing, on average. Well, screw you, Vox, because I'm not average, right? And when I die, yeah, maybe I'll be remembered and maybe I won't be remembered. You know what? I actually don't care. Maybe I'll be forgotten. I don't care. I'm going my own way. I rather suspect that the young men that I've trained across my lifetime will remember me, but maybe they won't. Okay? Now granted, quote, now granted, you have the exceptions. You have Isaac Newton. It is apparently believed that Isaac Newton died a virgin. He made massive contributions to humanity. Tesla made massive contributions to humanity. On the other hand, what a tragic loss to humanity and what a tragic loss to the gene pool those men represented. The point is, the average Minto is not a Tesla and he is not a Newton. Typically, he is just a very bitter gamma or maybe a delta who's been hurt by women and is going off to sulk. End quote. Really? He's been hurt by women. Many older Mintos have been driven to the edge of suicide by criminal victimization by women. So that's not hurt, Vox. That's criminal victimization. So screw you. If a Muslim man, now Vox, if a Muslim man raped and killed your wife, would you be hurt or would you want justice done? If a Muslim man raped and killed your wife, would you be hurt if you had to pay for him to live in a house? If you had to have your daughter then handed over to him and raised by him? The analogy should be, if your wife was raped and killed by a Muslim man and you had to hand half your stuff and your child over to him to be raised by him, would you feel hurt about that? Would you feel hurt about that, Vox Day? Or would you be a little bit more than just hurt? Would you consider the raping and murder of my wife was a crime? That man should go to jail for the rest of his life, and if he doesn't go there, I'll probably kill him myself. Would that be more of the way that you would be thinking, Vox Day? Rather than say, oh, well, he raped and killed my wife, and now what I need to do is I need to buy him a nice house, and I need to pay for him, and I need to hand my child over to him for him to raise, because I don't have a wife anymore, so he's got other wives, so my child can be raised by him, and that will be perfectly okay by me, and I'll just be a little bit hurt about it. Which, answer the question, Vox. Would you be hurt by that? Would you feel like that's a viable solution? Because that's exactly what happens to men, right? They are attacked and betrayed and destroyed by the one person that they need to put some trust in to raise their children, and you describe that as hurt. No, it's criminal victimization, right? And it's much more devastating criminal victimization than just a woman being raped, which is no significant crime at all, in my opinion, right? So, he's very bitter gamma, maybe a delta, who's been hurt by women and is going to sulk. Now, I was beta. I was absolutely admit that I was a very beta man by choice. I was a father, husband, provider, beta loser schmuck, right? And after a couple of years after divorce, I chose to step up to being alpha, right? And going off to sulk, really? I took on 4 national governments. What have you done, Fox? Oh, that's right, you've written some posts on a blog. You've written some posts on a blog. You've been sitting where it's nice and safe and comfortable. Haven't seen your video from inside a divorce court, Vox Day. Haven't seen your letters to all members of parliaments in 5 or 6 different countries, calling them out on the crimes they've been committing. Haven't seen someone like Angela Merkel send 4 cops into your house to assault you, kidnap you, transport you, drag you out of your own house in cuffs and throw you in a cage. Haven't seen you do any of that, Vox Day. So how dare you tell me that I'm going off to sulk when you've done none of the things that I've done? Again, screw you, Vox Day. Until you've done what I've done, you just keep your goddamn mouth shut, right? You're dealing with, in a meat-tail like me, you're dealing with a real man. So just keep your mouth shut until after you've done what I've done. And if you want to open your mouth and say something, open your mouth and talk about me as a meat-tail, as an example of what a meat-tail has done, which is far more than you've ever done, and which is far more than you will ever do, right? Then he goes on to say, quote, "But so what? We are in a cultural war. We are in a civilizational war, and there are always casualties in war, okay? Yeah, but you know, the casualties, it's just the men. We don't care if the men are casualties. We got to protect the women's. We got to protect the eggs. Okay, we're in a civilizational war. All right, great. I vote for and support the Islamification of the West. I'm on the side of Islam and Sharia for Western countries. And I've openly declared I'm on that side. And in being on that side, there'll be casualties in that war. Women will have Sharia imposed on them, which I think would be a great thing. I think that would be a massive improvement, right? Now, and you know, in that civilizational war, on which side I am on the side of Islam, to be introduced to Western countries like the USA, like Germany, like the UK, like Canada, like Ireland. I'm all up for Islam and Sharia being introduced to those countries in much broader terms. Okay? And it's a civilizational war, you're correct, and there will be some casualties in that war. And I'm sure you're okay with that, right, Fox? Because you just said that very offhanded way towards Western men. You just said it in a very offhanded way. Now, if Western men change sides and decide to switch to Islam, okay, and live under Sharia, okay, which they have every right to choose, I'm sure you would agree with their right to choose with that, and I'm sure you would agree in them inflicting some casualties, because you just very offhandedly talked to those men about sacrificing themselves as casualties of war in a civilizational war. If they change sides, I'm sure you'll be okay with that, right? Next thing, quote, "I am not mitigating the pain that these men go through." You described it above as, let me quote you. You described it as, "who's been hurt by women and is going off to sulk." That's a direct quote from you. You said, "Typically he is just a very bitter gamma, maybe a delta, who's been hurt by women and is going off to sulk." And then you say, "I am not mitigating the pain that these men go through. I am not denigrating the pain that these men go through. I'm not saying that their anger or their hurt or their bitterness is not well merited." But you did say, "they're just going off to sulk." Screw you, Vox. You're not getting away with that shit, right? You are not getting away with this shit of saying, "these men are just going off to sulk, but I'm not mitigating the pain that they go through." No, you're not getting away with that on my watch, Vox. That is complete hypocrisy on your part, and you're a hypocrite for trying to run that. It's not going to work. Then you say, "but yes, men should sacrifice for civilization. That is what civilization requires." That is what civilization has always required, and that is what civilized men do. Actually, no, not anymore, right? It is true that in the past, men have laid down their lives to progress civilization. That is true. Men went down coal mines. You know, in learning to control fire, men were probably burned alive. In going out and hunting the woolly mammoth for food for the tribe, men got stomped on by the woolly mammoth. Men have been sacrificing their lives since time immemorial to secure the future of the women and children. They have. Men have been willing to sacrifice their lives since time immemorial for the women and children. And it had to be a choice of self-sacrifice, because you couldn't force a man to sacrifice himself. You could only kick him out of the community if he wasn't willing to be a self-sacrificial little lamb. And so, all across human communities, all across human histories, humans, the older men of the community, have constructed the community such that the young men are propagandized to be self-sacrificial little lambs, and the women are to be protected. That has been right across human communities like forever. And I wrote about that in my story of the woolly mammoth, right? I wrote about that. Yes, civilization requires men to be sacrificial little lambs. But do we really need civilization? Right? Do we really need that? I would argue many men would be quite happy to take quite a few steps backwards and from this, quote, technotronic civilization that we're living in, and just let it collapse, let it fall. And many men are sitting back going, the West is going to fall, got my beer and popcorn, or my Coke and popcorn, depending on whether he likes beer or Coca-Cola or whatever, and they are going to watch the West fall. And some men are even going to join in on the side of Islam and Sharia like me and actively participate in the sunsetting of Western civilization. Right? And, well, you know, that's what civilized men do, sacrifice themselves to civilization. Yeah, and uncivilized men sit back and watch civilization fall. Because these uncivilized men who are willing to watch civilization collapse and fall, why should they be sacrificial lambs? They'll have a good life, right? While the decline goes on, the men who watch it fall will have a good life. Or even some men, some relatively by number of the population, a relatively small number of men will join me and say, okay, Western civilization is being sunset, it's going to fall, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to go live my life somewhere else. I'm going to live a life I love in a civilized society that appreciates men, that respects men, and honors men for the willingness to work hard and provide something back to the community. I'm going to go live somewhere like that. Okay? That's what, that option is open. Like any young man listening to this who says, hey, Vox is saying I should sacrifice myself for civilization, but I can leave and go live somewhere, and I should sacrifice myself for civilization for absolutely no reward, not even respect, which doesn't even cost anything, right? Respect doesn't cost money, right? Security of my rights doesn't cost money, okay? I'm not even asking for something that costs anything. I'm not asking anyone else to actually do anything for me. I'm just saying, if I'm willing to go and sacrifice my life for this so-called civilization of other people, the least I could get around here is a little bit of respect. Oh, respect is too much? Oh, well, I think I'll leave then. And more men are doing that, right? More and more men are saying, sacrifice myself for a civilization for people who don't care about me at all, don't even respect me, won't even speak to me with the respect I've earned over my lifetime. They won't even do that. Oh, I think I'll leave. Oh, when I leave, they call me all sorts of names for leaving. Okay, great. Well, good luck with that. Thank you very much for showing me where you stand. Good luck with that. Because we've seen from how men talk to me, having left the West, having done all the things I did while I was there, working to secure the rights of men, having done all that and take on criminals in government, having done all that, being slandered for doing all that, when I left, oh, how have men treated me since I left? Oh, well, they've slandered me some more. Okay? They've lied about me and slandered me some more since I left. So yes, civilized men have in the past sacrificed their lives by hard labour and warfare to protect the women and children, and we are treated not even with respect, we are treated with disrespect. We're called oppressors, we're called patriarchal overlords, and that is allowed to stand. These lies about us are allowed to stand. My grandfather was an Anzac who fought in World War II, and he's called an oppressive patriarch. And that comment is allowed to stand. Right? No, I won't have it. Women don't get to call my grandfather oppressive patriarch. I don't say that comment should stand. But I'm pretty much alone in that. Right? I'm pretty much alone. Other men don't back me up and say, yeah, his grandfather was an Anzac in World War II, fought for 4 years across the Pacific. How dare you call him an oppressive patriarch, you stupid woman? Wash your mouth out with soap and water. Shame on you. Other men don't say that. They go, oh yeah, he probably was an oppressive patriarch. Or they say nothing. He says, quote, you are here because some of your ancestors were willing to sacrifice for civilization. Yes, my grandfather was an Anzac, and many of his pals didn't come home. You know, Vox, my grandfather was in Singapore when, under the command of the British, where they thought it was an impregnable fortress. And when Singapore fell, just a few ships were available to take men out of Singapore, right? You know this as well as I do. Well, my grandfather was on one of those ships, Vox Day, and then my grandfather fought for 4 frickin' years all across Southeast Asia, places like New Guinea, risking his life every frickin' day to make his way back to try and save his mates. So don't you lecture me about one of my ancestors died at Valley Forge. My grandfather fought across Asia Pacific for 4 frickin' years. Don't you dare lecture me about ancestors and their sacrifice. Don't you dare lecture me on that point. My grandfather sat down with me as a lad, and he told me what he went through, and he told me what his buddies went through as they died and bled out on the jungle floor. So don't you dare lecture me about sacrifice of my ancestors. Screw you saying something like that to me. Just screw you, Vox Day, saying something like that to me. How dare you lecture me like that? How dare you? I know what my ancestors went through. My grandfather was there, and he told me. How dare you lecture me? How dare you lecture any man on that point? We know we do not need to be lectured by the likes of you, who's never done anything remotely dangerous in his entire freaking life, who's never defended another man in your entire freaking life, Vox Day. How dare you lecture me? Now, quote, if he was willing to do that, you are not willing to risk the possibility of losing 50% of your stuff for a few years? Really? That's what you're going to say? Oh, it's not that you lose your children and that your children are criminally abused. That's not the issue for men in divorce, Vox Day, according to you. That those children will be indoctrinated and abused. That's not the issue. The issue, according to you, Vox Day, is, you lose half your stuff for a few years. is, according to you, the issue of divorce. Well, screw you, Fox Day. Again, just screw you. The issue, the number one issue that men have in divorce is the woman criminally abuses the children. That's the number one issue. The number one issue that fathers have in divorce is the woman criminally abuses the children. Right? That's the number one issue, and you haven't even mentioned it. You talk about, losing 50% of your stuff for a few years. No, it's up to 100% of your stuff. In my case, 95% of my assets were stolen. But much more important for me was my children were kidnapped and criminally abused, and their opportunity for the future was taken away from them. That's what I was pissed off about, Vox Day, and you won't even mention it. So screw you and your obnoxious little twerpy view of what divorce is actually all about. Screw you and not talking about the real issues. Right? Just screw you, Vox Day, for papering over the real issue, which is the criminal abuse of the children and the violation of the man's right to raise his children in the manner to which he best thinks they should be raised. That's the issue, right? And you won't even recognise it. You won't even say it. Screw you, Vox Day. Really, just screw you. Quote, the funny thing is that half these guys who talk about this stuff say we have to fight and we have to do this and that and blah, blah, blah. You won't even risk the possibility of losing your stuff. You're not going to risk your life. You're not going to risk getting scratched. You know it. We know it. Stop pretending. End quote. Really, Vox Day? That's your opinion of me? Really? A man who walked into a divorce court with a video recorder and video recorded the crimes therein and posted onto YouTube and kept it there by serving notices on Eric Schmidt, Larry Page and Sergey Brin that if they allowed it to be taken down again, I'd prosecute them for obstruction of justice. Yeah, I served those three guys notices and they did what I asked them to do under promise, absolute promise of prosecution if they didn't do what I asked them to do. Can you get those three guys to do that, Vox Day? Right? Can you get Eric Schmidt, Sergey Brin, Larry Page to keep a video up on YouTube despite the fact two governments want it taken down? Can you do that? No, you can't. When I talk to Eric Schmidt, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, they freaking listen. Right? Now, how many men in the world have walked into a divorce court with a video recorder to record the crimes they're in and then publish it on YouTube? Precisely one. That being me. Not even Navy freaking SEALs who are in divorce have got the guts to carry a video camera in there and video record what happens. Not even Navy SEALs will do that, because plenty of Navy SEALs have been through divorces. Not Green Berets will do that. Not Marines will do that. No man, no other man will do that. Right? I have done what no other man on this planet is prepared to do. Because every man knows, every man in divorce knows, that if he walks into a divorce court with a video camera overtly saying, I'm going to record the crimes that are being committed in here and I'm going to put this on YouTube, every man knows that is an extremely, extremely dangerous thing to do. Okay? If it wasn't an extremely dangerous thing to do, more men would have done it. The average Marine would have done it. The average Green Beret would have done it. The average Navy SEAL would have done it. Lots of men would have done it. If there was no risk at all, if video recording a divorce court proceeding to prove the crimes that are happening therein carried no risk, lots of men would have done it. Vox Day. So, you're not going to risk your life, really? I'm not going to risk my life? I would argue that video recording a family court matter in front of 2 federal officers in Australia is putting your life at risk. I actually expected to be killed for that. Right? I actually expected to be killed for that. And I was really happy to wake up the next morning. That was a real plus, waking up alive. Not willing to risk my life. I've had Angela Merkel order 4 police officers burst into my home and drag me out in cuffs. I think that was relatively risky. They threw me into a jail. Do you know what the very first thing they did to me in jail was, Vox Day? Very first thing they did was test me for TB, because TB is rampant through German jails. And if you have TB, they put you in one section of the jail. And if you don't have TB, they put you in another section of the jail. I would argue that being in a jail, being jailed in an area in close proximity to other men who have TB is relatively risky. One of the guys I was jailed with was in there for murder. I would argue being locked in a cell in close proximity to a man who has killed somebody and has been jailed for it is risky. Vox Day. I would argue that I have faced plenty of risk. I would argue that, having my house stolen was presented a risk. I would argue that having cops continually coming to my house in Germany and threatening me was risky. Vox Day. I have risked a great deal, and I've put my life on the line, all the money I've had on the line, gone out and got more money and put that on the line, borrowed money and put that on the line. And what have you done? Oh, you've lectured me. You freaking lecture me. Right? You sit in your nice comfy little home and you lecture me. Screw you, Vox Day. Really. Who's pretending? You're not doing anything useful, Vox. Oh, you're talking some more. Oh, great. Like Stefan Molyneux, you're talking some more. Oh, great. You're not doing anything useful, Vox Day. Why don't you do something useful? My grandmothers, women, females, they had a saying, Vox Day. Their saying was, make yourself useful. Well, do what my grandmother said, Vox Day. Make yourself useful. And I can tell you that lecturing down your nose to megtos is not useful. Particularly when one of those megtos is me. Right? He goes on to say, quote, mothers are a necessity, end quote. Well, apparently fathers are not a necessity. So I'll tell you what, Vox Day, how about you just get women to marry these women who want to have babies, and the women can play the role of father, because women are better at men than everything, and the other women can have the babies, and we can just go MGTOW and everyone will be happy. Women can man up and marry these women. Women can go out and get jobs and provide for these women. Us MGTOWs, we can just go our own way. You don't need us. Because we're not necessary. Fathers are not necessary. Men are not necessary. Women can do everything. Yeah, we know. Mothers are a necessity. Fathers are optional. Yeah, we know. So we're taking the option. We're pissing off and we're leaving. Right? Now there's another whole bunch of woman worshipping for a while. And then Vox Day goes on to say, and I quote, there is literally nothing more important than a woman who makes a decision to become a wife and to become a mother and to raise the next generation of the West, because if too many women do not make that decision, the West will not survive. And you can't say that about anything that we men are doing. Yes, maybe the logic is ruthless, but it is correct. End quote. Oh, so all those guys who fought in wars, that wasn't the most important thing. It was the women, back behind lines, banging some other guy down the street, getting kids while her husband was away fighting. That was the more important thing to be doing. This sounds reminiscently like Hillary Clinton saying, women were the major victims of the war, or major victims of warfare, or the most serious victims of war, whatever her word was, because, you know, their husbands and their sons and their fathers get killed and they're left at home alone. Sounds reminiscently like that quote, Vox Day. So, you know, there's nothing more important than a woman who makes a decision to become a wife and become a mother and to raise the next generation of the West. The men who defend her, who provide the environment for her to do that, that's not more important. I wonder what takes precedence. Is it more important that a woman have a baby than providing her the safety and the environment to have that baby in? What's more important? Well, if the environment is not there to have the baby in, the woman can't have the baby. Like if men didn't guard the cave from the saber-toothed tigers and the saber-toothed tigers came in and ate the women, was it more important to guard the women from the saber-toothed tigers or more important for the women to have babies? Let me see. You know, I only have an IQ of 140 freaking 5, and this is a really difficult question for me. I just can't figure out what's more important, ensuring that the woman lives or that she has a baby. Right, Vox? Ensuring the woman lives to have a baby, is that more important or less important than having the baby? Is it a prerequisite for the woman having the baby? I think it is. You know, I only have an IQ of 145. It's such a difficult, very difficult question for me to answer as to whether it's more important to make sure a woman lives than it is that the woman has a baby. Such a difficult question for me to answer. And yet, you lied because you've got a fairly decent IQ, Vox. You tried to paint the picture that nothing is more important than a woman who makes a decision to become a wife and become a mother to raise the next generation. And you can't say that about anything we men are doing. We men provided the safety and security of the civilization in which the woman could have a baby. In fact, we men invented forceps which saved the lives, which have saved the lives of hundreds and hundreds of millions of women and babies. We men invented the forceps. We men left women to have babies and go through the birthing process for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and in all that time, women were too dumb to invent the forceps, which was a very small variation on tongs, which have been around reliably for 5,000 years, right? We know that mankind has had opposing levers as tongs for at least 5,000 years, probably longer, but let's just call it 5,000 years, and we left women in charge of reproduction for like all of human history till the 1700s, and some man noticed that, hey, lots of women die in childbirth. What's that about? And he went and had a look, and of course, you know, you understand the mechanics of childbirth. And he said, that's interesting. If I just change these tongs to be forceps and so we can pull the baby out if it's stuck, that'll save the woman's life and the baby's life. That was a man, Vox, and he was, of course, even a man saving women's lives in the 1600s, that was so politically incorrect even at the time that he actually gave credit for the invention of the forceps to his nurse, right? Because we couldn't possibly give a man credit for saving the lives of millions and hundreds of millions of women and babies. Couldn't possibly give a man the credit for inventing forceps, right? That's not okay, because, you know, women are so sensitive that they'd rather die than give man credit for saving their lives. But there's nothing that men are doing that's as important as a woman having babies. No, absolutely nothing. You bastard, Vox. I mean, you woman-worshipping bastard. Okay? Now, you're married, Vox. Okay? Vox Day, you are married. You say so, right? You talk about your wife and you talk about your child. I'm not quite sure how many children you have, right? So tell me, Vox Day, what has your wife done to make sure that women who commit perjury in divorce courts and steal the children of men to criminally abuse them, what has your wife done to make sure those women are held accountable for their crimes? You're on this Periscope. You're out lecturing people, right? You're out telling men what they should do with other women and how they should treat other women. You're lecturing us like we're 5-year-olds. So you tell us, and all your listeners, Vox, you tell me and you tell all your listeners, what has your wife done to ensure that women who commit perjury to kidnap and steal and criminally abuse the children of men are prosecuted for those crimes? What has she done? Right? And I look forward to your reply. Now that's 49 minutes of this. Quite frankly, Vox, I read your blog, I listen to what you have to say, I quite like you, right? But these comments you made are absolutely, totally, completely, and utterly repugnant and unacceptable to me, and I'm calling you on it, right? Now, I don't care if no one backs me up, and I don't care if 1 million MGTOWs back me up. I don't care. I'm putting this out there, and I'm telling you what you said was repugnant, beyond disgusting. Not this little leftist I'm offended bullshit. What you said was beyond disgusting. And I'm criticizing you for it, right? And I'm criticizing you for it from the position of being a man who's done much more with his life than you will ever do, and has already achieved more in his life than you will ever achieve. And if I'm successful in achieving what I'm setting out to achieve, my achievements in life will be far greater than yours. By so far, it's not going to matter, right? I'm criticizing you from that point of view. I'm criticizing you from the point of view of a man who's already raised 4 children. Tell me how to raise children. Tell me, lecture me in your silly little podcast. Next time you do a podcast like this, remember there are men like me watching. Okay? Or there are men like me who have subscribers who are watching who will bring this to my attention. Okay? So with that, 51 minutes. Thank you very much. Bye for now.
Not a problem. That was a long time ago.
The CIA niggers glow in the dark. You can see them if you're driving. You just run them over. That's what you do. Fucking CIA niggers.
Were you trying to get crazy with this, eh? Don't you know I'm loco?
You hear me? I'm not insane! This is not reality, not reality, not reality.
This is reality.
Not reality.
Terry A. Davis is the creator of Temple OS. That's Temple Operating System, an operating system dedicated to the worship of the Lord.
This is Temple OS. It's a 64-bit PC operating system.
Me and my deputies will take it from
It has an oracle. That's why it's called Temple OS. The main purpose is for doing offerings and of hymns and art and poems and stuff, and then getting a response from God in the oracle.
In fact, it's not just dedicated to him. It was specified by him. That's right, Temple OS is the only operating system that God has ever helped develop. Remember the Holy Covenant. 640 by 480.
God said 640 by 480, 16 color is a covenant like circumcision.
And God is a real stickler. Davis even has a Q&A with the Lord on his website where he outlines exactly what he wants. Operating system? Was about to make line number column and editor. God nixed it. Was about to do different graphics mode when I found 800 by 600 missing. God said just one mode, 640 by 480. I was about to add child windows. God said, God is not the author of such confusion. I asked for verification of 640 by 480, 16 colors. God said it was because of his children and their offerings. I asked about sound. God said, single voice. I asked for verification of not having different drivers. God confirmed this. Now, outside of the development aid from Yahweh himself, Davis spent a decade, an entire decade building this, all on his own, from scratch. Using Holy C, a variant of C, Davis programmed everything. And I do mean everything.
I made everything. I made a fucking editor. I made a compiler. I made a kernel. I made grep. I made merge check. I made convert to HTML. I made everything. I made a graphics library. I made a line draw. I did it all from scratch.
And with all that hard work and dedication, you can see that Davis was able to create something that can do some spectacular, divinely inspired things.
I like elephants, and God likes elephants. Here's a realistic elephant.
That elephant is holy. Blessed be his name. Amen. Amen. So who is this man of mystery? Well, there was an actual write-up about him back in 2014 on Motherboard that outlines a bit of his history, but I think it's helpful. I think it's a good place to start before we really dive into this, to give you an idea of who he is and why he spent so much time working on this project, and what it is exactly that he ended up creating. Sometime during the mid-90s, Davis began to notice people were following him. He wasn't sure exactly why they were doing it, but it made him paranoid. So paranoid that he got into his car and just started driving. He didn't even know where he was going to go. Luckily, the voices on the radio told him. They said, Davis, you need to go south. You need to go to Texas. Upon arriving at his new destination, Davis took his car apart, searching for tracking devices which might be hidden on it, threw his keys into the desert, and began to walk away. Now, it just so happened a little while later, a police officer happened to be driving by and saw him, put him into a squad car, and was going to drive him into the city. Davis, however, had other things in mind when he jumped out of the moving squad car and broke his collarbone on the highway. Now finding himself in a hospital, Davis overheard the doctors talking about x-ray results, which he was convinced were actually referring to hidden alien artifacts in his chest. He decided the best course of action was to get the fuck out of there, running out of the hospital with a broken collarbone and trying to steal a truck that was idling nearby. This would inevitably lead to his incarceration, but Davis still wasn't done yet. There's a reason they call him the MacGyver of the tech industry. Breaking his glasses on the floor, he took the frames and stuck them into an electrical outlet, hoping to free himself by switching a breaker. Didn't work out exactly as planned. Also, he was naked, because that's exactly how you want to greet the police when they come running into your cell, completely buck-ass naked. It was after this minor incident that Davis ended up moving back in with his parents and spent the next decade, the next 10 years, developing Temple OS because he wanted to speak to the Lord. Now I want you to try to imagine something. Think of a Bill Gates, a Steve Jobs, a Richard Stallman, a Linus Torvald, a Steve Wozniak. I want you to envision them. Just one day all of a sudden, stripping off all their clothes and jumping out a window, screaming about glow-in-the-dark CIA niggers and how they're coming to get them. How do you think people would react? What do you think the reaction to their legacies would be? Would people take pity on them? Would they separate the man from the accomplishment? Or would the sideshow overwhelm whatever legacy they had left behind? Now I want you to imagine that same scenario, where those people, those pioneers in their industry, hadn't actually reached the fame or recognition they deserved. That is Terry A. Davis. A man who had a psychotic break, a talented man, but who encountered mental illness so severe that any legacy he has will be overshadowed by the sideshow that he has become, because that is what we're looking at. I'm going to show you the sideshow, and afterwards, I want you to see if you can separate that from Temple OS itself. The first thing you're going to notice